Community comment.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning. Welcome into today's community comment. It's my pleasure to welcome into our Daily Dodge TV studio this morning. Our guest on the program today, excuse me, is the Waupun Police Chief, Jeremy Rosh. Chief, thank you so much for coming in today and chatting with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me again.
And if you have a question for the Chief, you can call into the show at 920-885-4446 or text 920-887-9595 if you have a question for our guest today on Community Comment. Again, that is Waupun Police Chief Jeremy Rosh here, and to really looking forward to our conversation a little on in this program. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the changes in law enforcement over the years, specifically when it comes to the Waupun Police Department, and diving into really what you have seen over your decades of experience there,
right,
and how much things have changed from one year to the next there in law enforcement. But that's coming up a little bit later in the program today. I want to just briefly kick off our conversation today and just give a quick little shout out to some of the agencies there in Waupun. Thankfully, Waupun, much like Beaver Dam, was spared really getting heavily hit from the storms that came through the area last Thursday. Juneau, Mayville were really the two of the hardest hit communities here in Dodge County. But I know that Waupun Police, thankfully, weren't out having to answer a lot of calls for people who were in some tough situations with damage to their property. But there were some other agencies there in Waupun that helped assist for those who needed it.
Yeah, I'm aware that Waupun Utilities and Waupun Department of Public Works helped out in communities like Juneau and Mayville, and I think the fire department was also called down, but they were canceled while they're on their way to Juneau on Thursday. But thankfully, it doesn't sound like there's anybody that was severely hurt.
Yeah, the most severe injury that I heard about was a roof that collapsed on somebody, but it was minor injuries that we heard of, and they were able to be released from the hospital. But yeah, thankfully, no injuries, serious injuries were reported. Yeah, so. And
it was kind of nice that we were spared this year,
yep,
because it was just last year with the hail damage and a couple other storms that they seem to hit Waupun quite a bit as well.
I was going to say, I remember last summer we were talking about the severe flooding that hit the city of Waupun and just how much damage that took up. And then I also recall on the day of my wedding, my wife and I, we had our reception at the Rock in Waupun there, and it was we had tornado warnings that hit that day. Waupun got hit pretty severely. That was in late July, I believe, when when that weather came in the summer of 2022. And then years ago, I believe this was before COVID, though, Waupun also got hit severely with some severe storms that came through. So, yeah, Waupun has been at the epicenter, it feels like, when it comes to a lot of severe storms and weather that's come through our area. Thankfully, it was spared this time around, and the city was able to not have to pick up and clear up from what happened last week.
Because there are quite a bit of processes that happen after you have an event like that. You have to have the documentation, because a lot of times you might be trying to get funding from the state or the federal government to reimburse the damage of the storms that the storms cause. So it's an extreme amount of documentation that takes a lot of effort by many people.
Yeah, and so thankfully that I know that I'm sure people in agencies in Juneau and Mayville are deep in that process right now. Right. Hopefully that they're able to get those things wrapped up quickly and don't have to spend a lot of time doing those things. But again, like you mentioned, that takes time. So it's a slow process, a long process, and a detailed process that they're in the midst of right now. But again, thankfully, nobody was seriously hurt in those storms last week, Thursday. But again, we're with Waupun Police Chief Jeremy Rosh here on Community Comment today. Before we dive into some of the topics we want to talk about today, I think we'll take a quick break and come back with more Community Comment right after this.
If you WBEV. Here's Kevin Haugen.
It is 10:18 on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. Welcome back into this morning's community comments. Again, our guest today on the program is Waupun Police Chief Jeremy Rosh, joining us today on the program. Again, if you have a question for the chief, you can call in at 920-885-4446 or text 920-887-9595 if you have a question for the chief of police there in the city of Waupun, Jeremy Rosh. And Chief, want to kick things off here in our second segment of community comment today, and just highlight a couple of department updates there in the city of Waupun.
Yeah, I'd like to just give a brief update. In March, we onboarded 3 employees, so that was exciting. Currently, officer in training, Charles Henson's at Fox Valley Tech, going to the Law Enforcement Recruit Academy, which he should be graduating in August. So we're excited for him. And then Patrol Officer Dean Hopp, he's doing an excellent job. He retired from the sheriff's office, and then he was kind of bored and needed something extra to do, and he's been doing great. And finally, Detective Crystal Conkle, she came to us from Oconomowoc and got through her training period, and she's been doing great handling her caseload. So, with that staff increased, we are at full staff on paper at this point, so no more hiring.
Okay.
Which is a nice feeling.
It's that's a good thing to say. You want opportunities for people to come in, but obviously it's great that all positions are filled up. I'm sure that helps with being able to move around shifts and have everybody that you want available where you need them available. To have that full. Is this the first time being chief there, or just being even beforehand deputy chief there? The full roster has been filled out like this, or has it been?
It's been a couple of years. Yeah. It was a tough few years with hiring and retaining employees, because there's so many opportunities out there right now. If somebody wants to go to a larger agency or a different agency, it's pretty easy to do these days. Yeah. So not like when I started. If you started, you stayed with that agency because it was extremely competitive.
Oh, sure. I mean, we've had members of law enforcement come on, and even just 10, 15 years ago, they would say, like, or even 5 or 6 years ago, they would say when you had people apply for jobs, usually you had a couple hundred people applying for one position. Now, a lot of times you have agencies paying for people to go to the academy and incentivizing people to apply and fill those roles. So it's really such a shift from how it was years ago.
Yeah, huge shift. When I paid myself to go through the academy, and many officers did back in the 90s and 2000s, and now it's, if they're not coming from another agency, you're often paying them to go to the academy.
Yeah, and you mentioned there was a couple of interagency hirings that have come over, or at least one with the detective from Oconomowoc, I believe you mentioned, that had come in. When you bring in somebody from a different agency, what kind of training that, obviously they know the basics, they know what the role entails, what the job entails, but what are some of the trainings that they are required to go through to get caught up to speed just with coming into a new agency like that?
Right, and it's a little bit different than somebody coming straight out of the academy.
Right,
so they often get through the field training program a lot quicker. With Detective Conkles, with her experience, and then with her position now, we had to train her in both patrol and investigations. Her training for investigations will continue. She'll go to external trainings, such as investigative trainings at tech schools and things like that. So that will continue throughout her career. But a lot of her training was on processes, on how we do it, compared to maybe how her former agencies did things.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously every agency does things a little differently from one another. So yeah, there's that learning curve to come in and pick things up on how this new agency does, filing papers or goes through the chain of commands and stuff like that. So is that process, is that a several week process? How long does that take for somebody to go through that?
I guess with Officer Hopp, who came in with a lot of patrol experience and investigative experience, and he's in a patrol position, it probably took us only about 3-4 weeks with him, where a normal, person with no experience, it's going to take about 12 weeks.
Yeah, so there is quite the there's a lot to learn,
Right.
regardless of if you have that experience or not. And it's great to hear though that staffing is where you're hoping and wanting it to be, and that's fully staffed there for the Waupun Police Department. That's exciting to hear. I also want to highlight here on Community Comment today. We've over the last several weeks have seen a lot of press and posts online and on social media recognizing officers who, there's been National Police Week that has taken place, and a couple not too long ago there was the law enforcement memorial that happened there in the city of Juneau to honor those in the line of who work in law enforcement who have died in the line of duty here in Dodge County. But Chief, it seems to be that time of year where we're putting some time aside to recognize those who work in this field. Yeah, and they. In Dodge County, they put on a great event, and we also go to one up in Fond du Lac. Yeah. Two great events, and this year the keynote speaker in Dodge County was Assistant DA Maggie Kunish, and it was an amazing speech by her. Tragically, her husband was shot in line of duty, but thankfully he lived, and that happened a number of years ago, and it seems like he's in good spirits, but very, very heartfelt. Yeah, speech. It was. Yeah, we remember hearing some of the sound bites that we captured from that event, and one thing that really stood out is just the guilt that you don't really think about that she felt with. That she was fortunate that her husband did survive that shooting, and she knows others that have spouses and loved ones that didn't survive, and it's like, well, why am I fortunate that I was able to bring back and see my loved one again, where others aren't able to have that same experience? So really, a really powerful speech there by Maggie Kunish, their Assistant DA of Dodge County, and just really things that, as a member of the public, you don't think about that people in law enforcement and loved ones of people who work in law enforcement have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Right. Yeah, and I'm sure there was many months of difficult times, after that incident. So thankfully it turned out in his favor, and he was able to survive. Yeah, no, I agree. And so that, again, is National Police Week, and there was that Law Enforcement Memorial Day that took place earlier in the month of May in the city of Juneau as well. And Chief, why is it, just as somebody who works in law enforcement and has a lot of experience as well, why is it important that we pause and recognize law enforcement officers and just the work that they do and the sacrifices that they make? Yeah, they made the ultimate sacrifice. Yeah. It's a tough profession. Not everybody's willing to do it, but for those who have fallen, we need to honor them in their lives and their agencies and their families. I maybe mentioned this last year, but if the listeners ever get a chance to go out to Washington, D.C., go to the National Memorial, the Police Law Enforcement Memorial. It's just a great sight, and it's you get kind of a eerie feeling there. Sure, yeah, but yeah. Paying respect to those that have fallen means a lot to law enforcement. Yeah, and even visiting the war memorials out there as well, yeah. Those who sacrificed and gave their lives in those conflicts as well. It's if it's an opportunity that presents itself, it's a worthwhile venture and journey to make to recognize those who have given that sacrifice in their line of duty. And Chief, want to now focus here. A bulk of our conversation this morning, I want to spend discussing, as I mentioned several times already, you've worked, how many decades now have you been? Decades. Come on, man. I'm in my 24th year. 24. So yeah. So it's 24 years. It's quite the amount of time working in law enforcement. So you have. You've seen quite the changes over the years, just from when you first started out till today. And that's kind of what we're looking at, spending a good amount of time chatting here today, is just those changes in law enforcement for over the years there, specifically when it comes to the Waupun Police Department. And Chief, where's a good place to kick off this conversation when it comes to the changes that you've seen in law enforcement? I think we just start with equipment. Let's start with a squad car. Yeah.
Do you have that image?
We do, yeah. If you're watching on Daily Dodge TV, the chief did provide an image for us that gives a good visual representation that you can just see side by side of how different the equipment has changed over the years.
Yeah, so if you're looking at the image, or if you want to Google late 90s, early 2000 Crown Victorias, there's an image of that, and then there's an image of our newer style squad car. Right off the bat, you look at the newer style just looks sleek.
It does. Yeah.
The older style just looks, I don't know, kind of blah.
It's not designed to look appealing, I think is safe to say.
Right. Even when it comes to simple things like the decals.
Sure.
You know. But ultimately, yeah, we had a rear-wheel drive. When I started, we had rear-wheel drive Crown Victorias. The new squad cars are Ford Explorers with all-wheel or four-wheel drive. So that's kind of a big switch that happened probably around 2000. I think we got our first SUV in 2014. So we had a couple Tauruses in there too, but they were kind of small. But within the squad car, you got a lot of equipment that nowadays that I probably didn't have back in the day. And there's been quite a few changes. So squad cameras. When I started, we had squad cameras, but they were VHS. So there was a lockbox in the trunk where a VHS tape would go in it, and it was only a 6-hour tape. So often you'd run out of room on the tape. A supervisor would have to change the tape out, or you'd have to call one at home. They'd have to come in to work and change that out. When we went to 12-hour tapes, we thought that was great.
That was the greatest advancement in technology ever.
It was. But after that, we went to more of kind of like an external drive.
Sure, yeah.
So it was a recording system that would save on an external drive, and you'd have to bring it into the police department and download the video, and that took hours.
Yes,
it took hours. So yeah, it was the digital enhancement and a lot easier with not having to change out tapes, but it took a lot more time. And now you drive into the Sally port with the squad car, and it automatically dumps that video right into the cloud.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to hear just things that used to take law enforcement officers hours to do back in the day is stuff that nowadays, thanks to the advancements in technology, can be accomplished in just mere seconds, just because of how we've grown as a society and the things that we've been able to change. And again, we'll chat more about all these changes in law enforcement here on Community Comment today with our guest, Waupun Police Chief Jeremy Rosh, here on the program today. We do have to take another break. More Community Comment is coming up next.
is Kevin Haugen with more community comment.
Well, thank you, Jake, and welcome back into this morning's community comment. Again, our guest on the program today is the Waupun Police Chief, Jeremy Rosh, joining us here on Community Comment this morning. If you have a question for the chief, you can call in at 920-885-4446 or text 920-887-9595 if you have a question for the Chief of Police in the city of Waupun, Jeremy Rosh. And Chief, before we went to break here, we were just sort of kicking off that conversation, discussing really how much has changed, excuse me, in law enforcement from when you started to today, and really sort of focusing in on the squad car when it comes to that change. We have a graphic here again. If you're able to catch us on Daily Dodge TV on our YouTube page, the chief provided an image, a great side-by-side comparison of just the difference of what the squad car looked like in the early 2000s to what it looks like today. And also we discussed the recording equipment inside and how much that has changed. And Chief, we're just sort of scratching the surface of really how much has changed from that time frame in the early 2000s to today.
Yeah, other items inside the vehicle, I think about cell phones. So we're kind of joking about it. It was basically a bag-style phone that would clip in, and, then it went to flip phones, and ultimately now, every officer has a cell phone because they have to have it for multi-authentication to get into certain sites and things like that we need to use for our jobs.
Yeah, and you mentioned too during the break when you first started there that the squad cars themselves didn't even have bars. If you arrested somebody and took them in, you mentioned that when you just started out, you had a couple of windows kicked out. So they existed. It takes time for certain agencies. It takes a while for them to implement certain upgrades and changes. But that was just one of the things that didn't exist when you started out there.
Yeah, no window bars, and I think I had 2 windows kicked out in about a week and a half. And I said, Chief, can we get some window bars? And then miraculously, within about a month, we had some window bars. So I think that was probably Chief Wincher back in the day. So
yeah, so sometimes it just is a simple conversation that can spur some change. What is there anything else in a squad car that we want to discuss or highlight when it comes to the changes over the years?
I think the biggest change is probably the mobile computers within the squad cars, and having internet and printers in there. When I started, we didn't have mobile computers, printers, internet. Everything was handwritten, and citations.
Right,
we wrote a lot of citations back then. Your hand got sore. Now it's basically you fill in the blank within your citation program on the computer. You can replicate citations and just change the offense, so that saves your hands. But I remember writing a bunch back in the day, and it was like your hand would cramp up because, just a lot of writing.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably the biggest change is that communication and when we switched, we had dispatch up until late 2003. So when we switched to the Fond du Lac County Communications dispatch center, which every agency in the county did at that point, that's when we got the computers, and we needed them for that extra communication at that time.
Yeah, and what other equipment, if it's not outside of the squad car, when it comes to even what you carry on yourself or what's at the station itself, what has changed also over the years?
I think a big thing is record management systems and CAD systems. So we document everything in reports, and I think this is my third records management system. And hopefully my last, because it's very taxing going through changes like that. So we're on what they call Spillman Flex. So all Fond du Lac County and Dodge County agencies are on that. Many agencies throughout the state are on that. So a couple other things. I think early in my career we had shotguns in the squad cars. Well, that soon changed to rifles. That was a big change, but
that's an interesting note to make, that those are two very different, at least somebody who's not a weapons expert. When I hear a shotgun and a rifle, those are two very different kind of weapons and what they can accomplish. Can you recall, or is there a reason why that shift was made from having a shotgun and a squad car to a rifle?
Yeah, I believe it's more of accuracy.
Sure. Yeah.
Less recoil. Shotguns tend to have a pretty heavy recoil if you don't have certain things attached to them.
I just feel like rifles tend to be more accurate or precise than a shotgun. You think a shotgun and it's spray, the bullets spray kind of outwards in a pattern.
Well, that's birdshot or.
Okay, see that. So all right.
You got,
So there are different ways. See, this is where it comes my complete lack of knowledge when it comes to shotguns or even weapons in themselves. So this is more of a weapon that you could point an aim and shoot, and it would spray out.
It would have a slug in it.
Okay.
So basically one bullet in it.
Gotcha.
But the capacity too for rifles, and I think law enforcement went away from rifles. There was an event that happened in L.A. years ago where. Probably in the early 90s, where the offender had more firepower than the police had. So at that time, police went to a gun store and used what the gun store had to take care of the situation.
Interesting. So that's here, quickly highlighting some of the changes. Is there anything else we want to highlight or know here before we go into break? I know that we covered quite a bit here, but just maybe in a retrospect, do you feel like a lot of these changes have been positive or good things for law enforcement, obviously to save time, processing time, or just out on the field? Has these changes made your job easier?
Yeah, I think so. I also think there's a lot of officer safety things that or items that have helped, just keep us safe. I think about our Detectachem spectrometer, which analyzes drugs, where we don't necessarily have to handle them in a less safe way anymore, or a vent hood where we can test drugs within a vent hood that keeps us safe as well. Narcan, and having that available in case something goes airborne and a staff member gets affected by that. So unfortunately a lot of these things cost a lot of money, and to keep up to date, it can be taxing on budgets, but for officer safety and community safety, we need a lot of these items.
Yeah, and another really quick thing I want to just highlight before we head to break here, and just the things that also can change is just how law enforcement responds to certain situations. And we talk about the equipment and the physical things, and that has changed over the years in law enforcement. But the one thing that I've learned the more I talk with members of law enforcement and those who work in this career field is that the way that you guys train and learn different scenarios, they are updated all the time based off of real world scenarios and how those progressed. And how you trained in something 5-10 years ago could be completely different looking ahead a couple of years, if depending upon what changed and how they are able to respond to these situations.
Yeah, and I think a good example of that is an active threat response.
Yeah.
So when I started, there wasn't an active threat response, and that has changed over the years too, where prior we didn't have the tactical EMS groups coming in with us. It was basically make the scene safe, and then EMS comes in. Now that has changed. So, or even the response, I think we had talked last show about the public. How do they respond? Yeah. Those things have changed over the years too.
Yeah, so it's been interesting to really kind of take a look back and just see all the equipment that has changed and how law enforcement is responding to these calls, how that has changed over the years here on Community Comment today. Again, with our guest, Waupun Police Chief Jeremy Rosh. Again, we have to take another break here. More Community Comment is coming up next.
101.53 WBEV. Here's Kevin Haugen.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome again back into our final segment of Community Comment this morning with Waupun Police Chief Jeremy Rosh. We've been chatting here most of our time on Community Comment today about just the changes that we've seen in law enforcement over the years. Here in our last segment, just want to spend a couple of minutes here highlighting one more change that has been a positive change, I feel like, that most people can say here, and that is really the growth in resource sharing and the teams that have grown for law enforcement to be a part of and utilize to help them out in what they're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and locally, Waupun's involved in some of these countywide teams, and like the child abduction response team, the major incident response team that we're just starting up in Dodge County. That's more of a response for civil unrest. Also the SWAT team, Officer Halverson from Waupun. He's the first officer in Waupun history to be on the Dodge County SWAT team, so that's kind of exciting. And then the drug task force, and we have a couple officers on the drug task force, and we've been working in that unit for a number of years. So we often are working with each other on certain cases and getting assistance from other agencies, and it's just a great working network when we can have good working relationships with staff and departments from both Fond du Lac and Dodge County.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's certainly a positive development here. Just that interagency communication as we've seen continue to grow and develop, and hopefully that continues to happen here over the years. And again, our guest here today, Waupun Police Chief Jeremy Rosh. Just a couple of more minutes left here on Community Comment today. With that time, just have one or two topics we want to hit on before we let our guest out of the building here today. And one of those is it doesn't feel like it now with the cold and windy and rainy weather that we've had here last couple of days. But summer is getting closer, and with that, the weather and the temperature goes up. And we just want to remind our listeners and viewers that it seems like common sense, but it happens. Unfortunately, I feel like every year we hear one or two stories of this happening tragically, of somebody leaving a child or a pet locked in their vehicle when the temperatures are not suited for that to happen.
Yeah, and it happens. It happens in Waupun, and often we get called to break into the car to, get the child or the animal out. We get a lot more calls on animals, but pretty. I think annually we probably do get a call for a child within a vehicle, and we got about a week. I think it's going to get to 75 and sunny next week at some point, so I feel pretty good about that. I'm more of a summer guy than a cold weather guy. Anyways.
I agree. Yeah, and is that something if somebody gets caught doing? Is this a citation or is it a crime? What's a penalty if you see if this does happen in your community?
Often it's an accident, but if it's purposeful, there are statutes that we could enforce.
Yeah. Again, as we see in 2024, just a quick stat: 39 children died from heat stroke in vehicles, which was up 35% from 2023. So yeah, again, it's something that take stock, count. If you're coming out of your vehicle, do a quick double check. It sounds again like a simple reminder, but you mentioned you've gotten called out several times. Your officers have called and responded to several of these instances over the years.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Slow down, look in your back seat, and then get out. I have kids too, and it's sometimes you forget that they're there, right? But then they talk or make noise, and oh yeah, I got to get Johnny out.
Again, it sounds like a no-brainer, but everybody is susceptible, busy lives, and things can happen. Again, want to here now shift and discuss a recent fundraiser that took place here, Chief, that you were a part of, that took place there at the local Dunkin' Donuts there in the city of Waupun.
Yeah, Dunkin' Donuts, cop on a rooftop. I like to say cop's not on a rooftop because I don't climb up on the roof. It was a little windy last Thursday, but we had that, or Friday morning, sorry. I was thinking of the storm there. But Friday morning we had it. We had a great turnout by the community donating to that Special Olympic event, and we had a couple athletes stop out and some people from Special Olympics stop out. So we've been a part of this for a number of years now, and the Waupun community is so giving. So we did raise I think about $1,000 just in cash, and then often people donate online. So I don't have those specific numbers yet, but it was a great event, and we had a lot of staff step up and help out.
Fantastic. And again, before we go, just want to give a quick shout out to an upcoming event, the Waupun Bike Rodeo, that's happening here at the start of June.
Yeah, we got the bike rodeo coming up June 6th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Located at the community center this year, the new community center at 520 McKinley Street on the corner of McKinley and Beaver Dam. So this is for children and bicycle safety. I know we got a ton of cool prizes this year already.
Exciting.
We reached out to some other businesses that are outside our community as well, like the Dock Spiders up in Fond du Lac donated some tickets. Mount Olympus donated some tickets, and just it's a great event. If your child comes and doesn't have a helmet, we give them a helmet. They often win prizes. They get to learn bike safety tips that our officers and the Waupun Parks Department leaders are instructing. And thanks to the Kiwanis Club, they always are one of our sponsors for that event.
Fantastic. And on that note, want to again thank our guest for joining us here on Community Comment today, the Police Chief of Waupun, the Waupun Police Department, Jeremy Roche. Chief, thank you again so much for joining us on Community Comment today.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
And that will do it for today's Community Comment.